and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired, and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Thanks for joining me on the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast. This is episode 41, and in this episode, I'll be sharing with you on this topic, 5 reasons I love you but not in love with you is a myth. Now, this is probably one of the most controversial episodes I've done simply because I'm pushing back against this notion that you can love your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife, while not being in love with them. Now, I understand this when it comes to other relationships. I can say that I love a lot of people, which I do, but I'm not in love with them. And I'm sure you do too, right? Most people see love as an emotion when really it's not. Love is an action. It's a verb. It's something we do. And that's where I believe the confusion comes from. Here's what happened. The romantic feelings we have being in a relationship with someone is the result of the loving actions that that person have shown towards us, right? That guy that showed you took loving actions and the things he did and the way he said certain things, or that girl, the things she did and the way she said certain things, that is loving actions. And over time, those loving actions, those deeds, is what creates the feeling, that warm, fuzzy feeling that you're now having is because of those actions that have been accumulated, have been shown towards you over time. So when we no longer have those feelings because that person isn't showing us loving actions anymore the way they used to, or someone else is now showing us loving actions, then we'll use that I love you but not in love with you card. We pull that card because we simply want out. And that is where you're going to hear this episode. That's the direction we're going to go. And this episode today is one that is the audio from a YouTube video that broadcast I did on my YouTube channel. If you have not been listening and watching my YouTube channel, then you would have missed that. But I feel that, here you are, you're my faithful podcast listener. I think that because it's doing so well there, I owe this to you. I need to also share this with you. And therefore I'm taking the audio from that YouTube video and sharing that with you in a few moments. And so you'll hear me make reference to the video and you will recognize that at that moment, right? I'll share in that video 5 reasons to make my point about why I love you but not in love with you is a myth. Okay? Now, to make sure you don't miss any of the episodes here on this podcast, I want to ask you to subscribe to this show. And if you missed any of the past episodes, I want to strongly encourage you to bookmark this podcast so you can quickly access the past episodes. And you can always go to happiermarriagesecrets.com, happiermarriagesecrets.com to access all the past episodes. Now, if this is the first time you're listening to me, let me say this. You may or may not agree with all that you will hear. And quite frankly, I don't expect you to. Why? Because you're smart. If you're listening to this podcast episode, to Happier Marriage Secrets podcast, only smart people, only people who are thinkers and people who are processors, people who I believe have self-awareness are listening. So I believe that you're going to have some issues with some of the things I say. And that's quite okay. And you might be triggered by some of what you'll hear on this episode. But remember, that's one of the purpose of this show. I can be a contrarian sometimes, as I am in this episode. So to stir things up. And then here's what I promise you. I'll take you in no matter what happens. I'll take you in for a solid landing. And you can always share your thoughts and comments. If you watch the video, you can comment there on YouTube. You can also send us an email, or you can share a rating and a review on this platform that which you're listening to this podcast. That's another way to show, to interact with me as well. Now, this show is brought to you by KingsleyGrant.com. Our hope is that you will be challenged, inspired, and encouraged in this episode as in every other episode. So stay tuned.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of Happier Marriage World? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage podcast. Today, as you've heard, we're talking about the 5 reasons I love you but not in love with you is a myth. Yes, you heard that right. Now, just to remind you that you can also watch video episodes of topics like this one. Actually, you can watch this one here on my YouTube channel at Kingsley Grant, right? Kingsley Grant, you can watch that. And make sure that when you do, would you promise me, would you do me a favor? Please, when you go there, smash that subscribe button. Click on the like button if you like what you're hearing, and then also the notification bell so you won't miss out on those video broadcasts that I produce on a regular basis. And you can also get shorter versions of some of the points I make in my YouTube channel on my YouTube Shorts. You can consume those in a much quicker way because they're like, maybe a minute and a half or less than a minute in length. So you can actually get those, watch those, consume those. And then, if you want to watch a full version, you can watch the video on the channel as well. Again, let me simply say thanks for joining me for this podcast episode. As you've already heard, we're talking about the topic of 5 reasons I love you but not in love with you is a myth. So without further ado, my friend, let's dive into today's episode, which is the audio, as I mentioned, from my YouTube broadcast on this very topic. So let's get started. Hey there, welcome to today's episode. And today we're going to talk about 5 reasons why I love you but not in love with you is a myth. We're going to debunk this notion on this video. Now, I've listened to a number of people opining on this topic and give all the reasons why this statement, in their opinion, is valid. They legitimize this statement. They validate. It's almost like, yeah, it is. It is what it is. Now, I understand why people make this statement, and it's also like those people who I've listened to and watched several of those videos, even here on YouTube, and they're seeming to be making a case for it, but not here. We are going to debunk this myth once and for all. Now, in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 reasons why it is a myth, but also give you some reasons, three contextual reasons why a wife or a husband would make this statement. So I'm not going to be naive to the fact that there is a possible, from that person's point of view, very, in their mind, a legitimate reason why they would say that. But really, is it true that I am in love with you, but no longer, I love you, but no longer in love with you? Is that truly a valid statement? Now, if you're hearing me for the first time and wondering, who am I to be speaking on topics like this one? Let me just say, I'm Kingsley Grant, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach. I help married couples have happier marriages, right? Have happier marriages. I make marriages happier again. Now, having counseled and coached hundreds of couples over the past several years and having been married for almost 4 decades, I think I'm more than qualified to talk about topics like this one and to do so with confidence. And I hope you'll come to that realization at the end of this video as you watch. So let's dive into today's topic. 5 reasons why I love you, but not in love with you is a myth. Now, as I said earlier, I am not naive and not somehow, again, like I mentioned before, working with so many couples, I've heard this statement. I've heard this very same statement many, many times, right? And I believe, I have a reason. I have reasons. I've been given reasons. Let's put it that way. I've been given reasons why a spouse would say, I love you, but not in love with you. Now, when I hear it, I am looking for the real reason, right? It's almost like my spider senses goes up and I'm looking, okay, what is the contributing? What's the essence? What's the bottom line here? What's happening below the surface? And based upon my observations and my experience with couples, as I mentioned, of all these many hundreds of couples, not saying every couple that come in I've used this, but a number of them have. And what I have discovered, and based on my observation, I believe I've come to 3 conclusions, right? 3 conclusions as to why a person may say this. And here is what I've seen and I've heard. Number 1 is that there is an interest somewhere else. That person is having an interest in possibly someone else, somewhere else, right? And when I say somewhere, I think it's because it's normally someone else. Someone else have caught their attention. Someone else have gotten their ear. Someone else is paying them the attention they've been wanting. Maybe their marriage has been not what they were hoping for it to be. And somehow they've reached out to a friend that they've known for a very long time. It could be an ex or just somebody that they believe they could confide in and talk about their relationship. And that person has given them all the attention they needed. And so there's an interest that have developed somewhere else. And so over time, when that interest begin to become more satisfactory, where they find that person to be more satisfying in their relationship, they're confiding, that they begin to lose that spark that they once had in their own marriage, even though that may have been lost quite some time, but it begin to almost disappear. And so there's interest somewhere else. The second conclusion I've come to, and based upon observations and my discovery, is there is unforgiveness in the relationship because there's a resentment that's been built up and almost like a repulsiveness where they are repulsed with the idea of being around their husband or their wife, something that person may have done. And it could be that it's an infidelity. I've seen that sometime. And when that person begin to think about, what may have gone on and listened and have asked questions and have gotten the information that, it just stays with them. And that's why I think that sometimes when a person is working through this infidelity issues, they want to work with it through a third party, a professional. Why? Because they might injure themselves even more so than they already are injured by the way they've asked and framed their questions and why they want to know certain details. And I get it. I understand why it's important, but I think it can create a repulsiveness and resentment and unforgiveness. And sometimes as time has gone by and they've sat in that unforgiveness and resentment, then that leads to the place where their heart feels distant from their spouse. They don't feel like they truly love and admire their spouse as they once did. And so what happened is that has led them to almost an empty feeling where they don't feel like they're in this, there's no romance, there's no fire, and it's gone out. And they're wondering, what am I doing here? And they will say, I love my husband. I love my wife. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just not in love anymore with them. So I find that to be another conclusion that I've come to. The third one is when there is abuse, verbal, emotional, or physical abuse in the relationship, and that person have had enough. They have been beaten down and worn down and stripped of all their dignity, right? And they have nothing left. They feel like, I'm empty. I'm like a shell of a person. And so what happened is now they begin to feel like, well, I'm not, I still love my husband, if they would even say that anymore, but they will say, definitely, I'm not in love with him or her anymore. How can I be in love with someone who treats me that way? Who is, and they'll use words like narcissist or, is whatever else that words they'll use, but is making the case of why they cannot be in this relationship anymore. And they'll say, because of that, I'm not in love with that person anymore. And they will try to say, I'm still holding on to that. I just love there, but I'm just not in love with them anymore. So what then are 5 reasons why I believe that this I love you, but not in love with you is a myth? Here's the first reason I want to give you. It's a misunderstanding that love is just a feeling. People who think that love is just a feeling, they base their love upon how they feel about their husband or their wife. And somehow they're now thinking, because I don't feel that way, I must not be in love with my husband or my wife, because they're basing love, the definition of love, on a feeling. They assume that it's just a feeling, but love, my friend, is more complex than that, right? Love is a combination of emotions and actions and behaviors, and those things make up the relationship, the marriage. But I want to go a step further by just giving you one very, very, I believe, rule of thumb when it comes to love. Love, in essence, is a choice. Love is a choice. Whether it's an action or a behavior, I've chosen to behave that way. I've chosen to love my wife. She's chosen to love me. It begins as a choice. And that must be the thing that precedes everything else. Every single day you choose to either love or not to love. So it's not a feeling. So when you say, I'm not in love with I love him, it's as if those two are separate entities of themselves. They're not. Like I just said, it's a complexity of it, because it involves, it's intertwined, right, of emotions and actions and behaviors. And somehow you think, because all those things are not happening, I'm just not in love. So the reason why I believe it's a myth is that love is a feeling. You base it upon how they feel, right? Feel comes secondary to actions. So one of the reasons why I think it's a myth. The myth number 2, one of the reasons why I think, number 2 reasons why I think is a myth, because attraction can grow. Attraction for your spouse can grow, means it is something that it has an ebb and flow. Some day you feel like it's growing. Other days it feels like plateauing, right? It's plateaued. But it's a growth opportunity, right? So with effort and through communication, you can grow where you are. You choose, like I mentioned before, now you can let that growth occur. So not because you don't feel that you're in love right now, because of something that is going on, doesn't mean that it won't happen in the future as you choose to love your husband, as you choose to love her, right? And work through the things that are possibly roadblocks to this feeling you're talking about. But remember, it's an opportunity for growth. So attraction that you have for your spouse is something that grows with time. It's not just a one-time, one-off deal. No, it's something you work on and you develop and you evolve and become better at at this with your husband or your wife. Number 3, love and attraction, right? The attraction that's growing, they're linked together. Love and attraction are interconnected, can impact each other. So when you just focus on one aspect of love, like the feeling aspect of love, you might be missing out on the potential of a deeper connection, because love and attraction, they're linked. So the more you can create in your mind reasons why you can love your husband or love your wife and make a case for them, just how they carry themselves, how they interact with people, how they love on people, whatever else case you want to build, that will create an attraction. You're attracted to that kind of person, and you begin to feel a sense of like, man, this is an awesome feeling to have for my spouse, because when I see him or her in action, my heart just gets so filled and overcome. So it's an attraction, and love and attraction has been growing are linked together. So first we mentioned, the first thing we mentioned was love is not just a feeling. The second thing, remember, attraction. Attraction can grow if you can give it time, right? It may not be where you is today, but it can grow if you find the right things to focus on. And number three, love and attraction, right? They are linked together. So the more that grows, then the more attraction grows, the more love, emotions you will feel for your spouse. Number four, relationships, marriage require work, right? It's one of those 4-letter words that sometimes when I tell people about what they might need to work on in their relationship, I hear this so often. I mean, that's hard. That will be hard. And I'm saying, well, yeah, if it's work, it should be. Is it worth working on, working for? Obviously it does. So when you say it's going to require work, well, what do you expect? Is it something of value? You work for things that are valuable, that are important to you, right? So it requires effort and dedication to maintain this connection, this deeper connection. So saying I love you, but not in love with you implies that love, as I mentioned earlier, is just a feeling and it cannot be changed. And that is not true. It's a myth. Because when in reality, relationships require the effort and work. And the more you're working on it and the more effort you put into the relationship, that also will take over your emotions, your feelings, and put it in the right place, in the right perspective. The fifth reason that I have here, and this is a very important one, is to remember love is a journey, not a destination. Love is a journey, not a destination. So some people think that love is this static idea, it's not like you're on this journey with your spouse, but it is, my friend, because it's taking in all the elements of efforts you're putting in, the work and the growth and the commitment that is going into those relationships, right? Yes, you're going to have ups and downs in a relationship. That's understandable. But that doesn't mean that love is lost when you're having some down and less down than ups. Remember, that's a rhythm of the relationship. And every relationship that is not static, and it is not, have the ebbs and flow, it should go up and down. It cannot always remain up and should not always remain down. It should be this kind of dance that's taking place and this kind of a rhythm that's been formed in the relationship. And once it's in sync and you understand this idea of up and down and up and down, what's happening is you expect these moments that can happen to you and not be surprised by that. So it's important to work on maintaining this idea in about what relationship is truly about. So here are again 5 reasons that I believe that this is a myth, right? It's a myth, and I share with you where it's coming from. But number one, love is not just a feeling. Let me quickly share again with you the conclusion that I've come to based upon working with people, because I said there are interests somewhere else. There's unforgiveness or resentment or repulsiveness that's in the relationship. And there could be abuse, verbal, emotional, physical abuse that's taking place that lead a person to want to say those things. Now, here why the 5 reasons why I believe it's a myth, or I say it's a myth, because love is not just a feeling. That's number 1. Number 2, remember, attraction can grow. Attraction can grow for your spouse, your partner. Number 3, love and attraction are linked. So if you're growing your attraction, then the love and that are linked together. Number 4, relationships require work. And number 5, love is a journey, not a destination. Now, I would love to hear from you what your thoughts are on this very topic that I have just said. I want to debunk that it's a myth. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it is that you heard that makes this make sense for you. And if you agree with any of these, just comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are. So the 5 secrets to your happier marriage can be had at kingsleygranttcom KingsleyGrant.com/HMS ebook. KingsleyGrant.com/HMS ebook. So my friend, again, you can see all the links below and I'll leave them right there for you. So now let's make marriages happier again. With that said, my friend, and there you have it, my friend. I hope you were able to find great value from this episode. And if you did, I'd like to hear from you. And one of the ways I mentioned earlier that you can leave a rating and a review on the platform here that you're listening to this podcast. And I would love for that to happen. I'm asking you for a 5-star rating. I believe that I've earned that, right? And secondly, if you'd like to watch a YouTube version with illustrations of this episode you're listening to, then head over to my YouTube channel, Kingsley Grant, and you'll find that as well as many other video broadcasts that I've also done there. Make sure you subscribe when you do, like I've asked you to in the beginning. Now, if you have not yet checked out our new website at happiermarriagesecrets.com, let me encourage you to do so. There you'll find all the podcast episodes that I've done and blog posts also in one place, happiermarriagesecrets.com. Also, let me remind you to take the Happier Marriage Assessment quiz that will score your marriage and give you the results immediately, as well as a PDF explaining those very results that you have received. You can access the quiz. You can access the quiz at happiermarriagesecrets.com/quiz. And the link will also be in the description, right, as follows this episode. So you can click on that and take the quiz as well. So thanks again for listening. And the announcer will tell you how to get a free gift just for staying to the end. Now let's make marriages happier again.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at KingsleyGrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's KingsleyGrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.